Hare Krishna, everyone.
Hare Krishna.
So, continuing our reading from the Grantaraj, Srimad Bhagavatam.
Yes, Canto 3, Chapter 3, Text 20. So we're going to aim to finish the chapter today because there's only, Chapter 28 verses. We've only got 8 verses, so how lovely we can finish Chapter 3. So the chapter is called The Lord's Pastimes Out of Vrindavan.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Text 20. He was there in his transcendental body, the resistance of the goddess of fortune, with his usual gentle and sweetly smiling face.
Residence, isn't it?
No, face.
Residence. You said resistance.
Oh.
I don't think the Lord was resisting the goddess of fortune.
Oh.
Sorry, I did wrong.
I'll start again because I was interrupted. He was there in his transcendental body, the residence of the goddess of fortune, with his usual gentle and sweetly smiling face. Yeah. His nectarian words and his flawless character.
That's God for you.
In the previous verse, it is described that Lord Krishna, being situated in the truths of Sankhya philosophy, is detached from all kinds of matter. In the present verse, it is described that he is a residence of the goddess of fortune. These two things are not at all contradictory. Lord Krishna is detached from the variegatedness of the inferior nature, but he is in eternal blissful enjoyment of the spiritual nature, or his internal potency. One who has a poor fund of knowledge cannot understand this distinction between the external and internal potencies. In Bhagavad Gita, the internal potency is described as the para prakriti. In the Vishnu Purana also, the internal potency of Vishnu is described as para shakti. The Lord is never detached from the association of para shakti. This para shakti and her manifestations are described in the Brahma Samhita 5.37 as Ananda Chinmaya Rasa Pratibhavitavi. The Lord is eternally joyful and cognizant in the taste derived from such transcendental bliss. Negation of the variegatedness of the inferior energy does not necessitate negation of the positive transcendental bliss of the spiritual world. Therefore, the Lord's gentleness, his smile, his character, and everything related to him are all transcendental. Such manifestations of the internal potency are the reality, of which the material shadow is only a temporary representation from which everyone with proper knowledge must be detached. Hare Krishna, Bhavani Durga.
Any thoughts, reflections?
Yeah, I like the way Prabhupada says, one who has a poor fund of knowledge. It's a polite way of saying one who's a bit stupid, really. One who has a poor fund of knowledge doesn't understand the internal and external potencies.
Yeah, I like that term. Prabhupada uses it all the time. Poor fund of knowledge. I remember the first time I heard that. I thought that's an interesting way of putting that one isn't quite so bright. Text 21. The Lord enjoyed his pastimes both in this world and in other worlds, higher planets, specifically in the association of the Yadu dynasty. At leisure hours offered by night, he enjoyed the friendship of conjugal love with women. Purport. The Lord enjoyed in this world with his pure devotees. Although he is the personality of Godhead and is transcendental to all material attachment, he nevertheless exhibited much attachment for his pure devotees on the earth, as well as for the demigods who engage in his service in the heavenly planets as powerful delegated directors in the management of all material activities. So that's a good definition of the demigods, huh? Powerful delegated directors in the management of all material activities. He displayed special attachment for his family members, the Yadus, as well as for his 16,000 wives, who had the opportunity to meet him in the leisure hours of the night. All these attachments of the Lord are manifestations of his internal potency, of which the external potency is only a shadow representation. In the Skanda Purana, Prabhas Kanda, in the topics between Lord Shiva and Gauri, the manifestation of his internal potencies is confirmed. There is mention of the Lord's meeting with 16,000 cowherd damsels, although he is the Hamsa, transcendental, supersoul, and maintainer of all living entities. The 16,000 cowherd damsels are a display of 16 varieties of internal potencies. This will be more elaborately explained in the 10th canto. It is said there that Lord Krishna is just like the moon, and the damsels, part of his internal potencies, are like the stars around the moon. So the Lord is just like the moon, and all the gopis are just like the stars that circle the moon. So, yeah, interesting section here. So, yeah, just explaining how Krishna more or less spends his quality time with the damsels, 16,108. Yeah, like that.
Okay, text 22. The Lord was thus engaged in household life for many, many years, but at last his detachment from ethereal sex life was fully manifested. Purport. Even though the Lord is never attached to any kind of material sex life, as the universal teacher, he remained a householder for many, many years, just to teach others how one should live in householder life. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur explains that the word samajayata means fully exhibited. In all his activities, while present on the earth, the Lord exhibited detachment. This was fully displayed when he wanted to teach by example that one should not remain attached to household life for all the days of one's life. One should naturally develop detachment as a matter of course. The Lord's detachment from household life does not indicate detachment from his eternal associates, the transcendental cowherd damsels, but the Lord desired to end his so-called attachment to the three modes of material nature. He can never be detached from the service of his transcendental associates, like Rukmini and other goddesses of fortune, as described in the Brahma Samhita 5.29, Lakshmi Sahasra Sata Sambrahma Sevyamanam. So he's just wrapping up his Leela pastimes on this earth. That's what he's doing.
Text 23. Every living entity is controlled by a supernatural force, and thus his sense enjoyment is also under the control of that supernatural force. No one, therefore, can put his faith in Lord Krishna's transcendental sense activities, but one who has become a devotee of the Lord by rendering devotional service. Excuse me. Purport. As stated in Bhagavad Gita, no one can understand the transcendental birth and activities of the Lord. The same fact is herein corroborated. No one but one who is enlightened by the devotional service of the Lord can understand the difference between the Lord's activities and those of others who are controlled by the supernatural force. The sense enjoyment of all animals, men, and demigods within the purview of the material universe is controlled by the supernatural force called the Prakriti, or Devi Maya. No one is independent of obtaining sense enjoyment, and everyone in this material world is after sense enjoyment. Persons who are themselves under the control of supernatural power cannot believe that Lord Krishna is not under any control beyond himself in the matter of sense enjoyment. They cannot understand that his senses are transcendental. In the Brahma Samhita, the Lord's senses are described as omnipotent, i.e., with any sense, he can perform the activities of the other senses.
Oh, great, you read Krishna book, Bhavani. This just touches upon the past times, but it will go into greater detail in the 10th canto. This is just touching it, though.
Yeah, this is what the acharyas call incidental hearing. So in the first 9 cantos, we incidentally hear about Krishna's pastimes through different conversations between his pure devotees. But the 10th canto goes into much greater depth, even as you've read the Krishna book, so that's pretty much got everything in it. But of course, the purports and stuff that Prabhupada puts there. Where was it? Brahma Samhita, the Lord's senses are described as omnipotent. With any sense, he can perform the activities of the other senses. One who has limited senses cannot believe that the Lord can eat by his transcendental power of hearing and can perform the act of sex life simply by seeing. The controlled living entity cannot even dream of such sense activities in his conditional life. But simply by the activities of bhakti yoga, he can understand that the Lord and his activities are always transcendental. As the Lord says in Bhagavad Gita 18:55, Bhaktyamam abhijananti yavanyaschasmi tatvataha. One cannot know even a fraction of the activities of the Lord if he is not a pure devotee of the Lord. So in order to understand the Lord, you have to be a pure devotee of the Lord. Otherwise, these things don't make sense. We're not able to accept them or understand them.
Text 24. Once upon a time, great sages were made angry by the sporting activities of the princely descendants of the Yadu and Bhoja dynasties, and thus, as desired by the Lord, the sages cursed them. Purport. The associates of the Lord who were playing the part of princely descendants of the Yadu and Bhoja dynasties were not ordinary living entities. It is not possible that they could offend any saintly man or sage, nor could the sages, who were all pure devotees of the Lord, be influenced to anger by any of the sporting activities of the princes born in the holy dynasties of Yadu or Bhoja, wherein the Lord himself appeared as a descendant. The cursing of the princes by the sages was another transcendental pastime of the Lord to make a show of anger. The princes were cursed in order that one may know that even the descendants of the Lord, who could never be vanquished by any act of material nature, were subjected to the reactions of anger by great devotees of the Lord. One should therefore take great care and attention not to commit an offense at the feet of a devotee of the Lord.
So this seems to be stressing that actually the cursing that came from the sages that destroyed the Yadu dynasty, this was simply just pastime, because those sages would never curse the Yadus, and the Yadus would never make fun in general. So it had to be the arrangement of the Lord. Excuse me, text 25. A few months passed, and then, bewildered by Krishna, all the descendants of Vrishni, Bhoja, and Andaka, who were incarnations of demigods, went to Prabhas, while those who were eternal devotees of the Lord did not leave but remained in Dwarka. Text 26. After arriving there, all of them took bath, and with the water of this place of pilgrimage they offered their respects to the forefathers, demigods, and great sages, and thus satisfied them. They gave cows to the brahmanas and royal charity. Purport. Amongst the devotees of the Lord, there are several divisions, mainly Nityasiddhas and Sadhanasiddhas. The Nityasiddha devotees never fall down to the region of the material atmosphere, even though they sometimes come onto the material plane to execute the mission of the Lord. The sadhana siddha devotees are chosen from the conditioned souls out of the sadhana devotees. The sadhana siddha devotees are chosen from the conditioned souls. Yeah. Out of the sadhana devotees, there are mixed and pure devotees. The mixed devotees are sometimes enthusiastic about fruitive activities and are habituated to philosophical speculation. The pure devotees are free from all these mixtures and are completely absorbed in the service of the Lord, regardless of how and where they are situated. Pure devotees of the Lord are not enthusiastic to put aside their service to the Lord in order to go visit holy places of pilgrimage. A great devotee of the Lord in modern times, Sri Narottam Das Thakur, has sung like this: to visit the holy places of pilgrimage is another bewilderment of the mind, because devotional service to the Lord at any place is the last word in spiritual perfection.
For pure devotees of the Lord who are completely satisfied with the transcendental loving service of the Lord, there is hardly any necessity to visit the various places of pilgrimage. But those who are not so advanced have the prescribed duties of visiting pilgrimage sites and regularly performing the rituals. The part of the princely order of the Yadu dynasty who went to Prabhas performed all duties to be done in a place of pilgrimage and offered their pious actions to their forefathers and others. As a rule, every human being is indebted to God, the demigods, great sages, other living entities, people in general, forefathers, etc., for various contributions received from them. Thus, everyone is obliged to repay the debt of gratitude. The Yadus who went to the Prabhas pilgrimage site performed their duties by distributing land, gold, and well-nourished cows in royal charity, as described in the following verse.
Text 27. Well, I like this statement. To visit holy places of pilgrimage is another bewilderment of the mind, because devotional service to the Lord at any place is the last word in spiritual perfection. So I think this is really important. Earlier today I was speaking with a devotee and discussing about, as we get older, he's getting older and he's thinking, of retiring and spending more time at the temple and engaged in temple activities. And I was just explaining that actually, renunciation isn't necessarily coming to a point where we give up things, but it's actually an internal process. And we don't need to necessarily be in proximity of the temple. We should be creating temples at our home. And what to speak of, our body is meant to be considered like a temple because it houses the soul and because Krishna also resides within it. So I like this statement that visiting holy places of pilgrimage, although we're encouraged, of course, to do that, but the point is that devotional service to the Lord at any place is the last word in spiritual perfection. So to perform devotional service at home or at work or this or that, that's perfection. You don't need to go to a specific place. I remember my mom, she brought up as Christian, but she wasn't so fond necessarily of going to church. She found it quite judgmental. So she was, I remember when she said, I don't need to go to the church to know God. You can get to know God from anywhere, wherever you are. So like that. Is it your turn?
No, it's you.
Okay. Text 27. The Brahmanas were not only given well-fed cows in charity, but also gold coins, bedding, clothing, animal skin, seats, blankets, horses, elephants, girls, and sufficient land for maintenance. Purport. All these charities were meant for the Brahmanas, whose lives were devoted entirely to the welfare of society, both spiritually and materially. The Brahmanas were not giving their services as paid servants, but the society provided them with all necessities. It was arranged for some of the brahmanas who were in difficulty for marriage to be given girls. The brahmanas therefore had no economic problems. Well, there you go. The Kshatriya kings and rich mercantile men would provide them with all that they needed, and in exchange the brahmanas were completely devoted to the elevation of society. That was the way of social cooperation between the different castes. That's interesting. When the Brahmana class or caste gradually became easygoing, being fed by the society, although they had no Brahminical qualifications, they degraded themselves into Brahma Bandhus, or disqualified Brahmanas. And thus other members of society also gradually fell down from the social standard of progressive life. As described in Bhagavad Gita, the caste system is the creation of the Lord and is arranged according to the quality of work rendered to society, and not in the terms of birthright as falsely claimed in the present degraded society. Any reflections on that? There's a lot of stuff in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, that was deep.
This is a lot of stuff. I'm just going through it again.
Well, yeah, it talks a lot about Varnashram. In one sense, the way that the Brahmanas and the Kshatriyas would interact together. How the Brahmanas had no economic problems. In fact, they supply everything to them, which is this whole list that was given. You know, they had food, clothing, place to stay. Even if you were unmarried, you could have a few women given to you. Okay, it's quite funny. I mean, it's not that we think of women as commodities, but in the modern day, sometimes we might think, yeah, it'd be good if I wanted to get married, if someone just supplied me with a husband or a wife. Like that. And then, yeah, this part, Kshatriya kings and rich mercantile men would provide them with all that they needed. And in exchange, the Brahmanas were completely devoted to the elevation of society, which is very interesting. You know, exactly what does that mean? What does that look like to have a service description? What does it mean to have the service description that you're responsible, completely devoted to the elevation of society? Well, how does that look? It means that society, everything in the material world has a tendency to degrade. So to elevate something means you have to keep propping it up, pushing it up. And primarily what that means is through education, through teaching, giving knowledge of what society is meant for. As we read a few verses before, that really the goal of society, the goal of life, is to cultivate our eternal connection with God, to reconnect ourselves as spiritual beings, as souls, with Krishna, with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That's yoga or union. So that's really the goal, and anything else beyond that means, that it falls short of the goal. And so therefore, society can easily fall into just being worried about economic development, dharma, artha, kama, moksha. So economic development, religiosity is just rituals, kama, sense enjoyment, or just wanting to escape and merge. So elevating society means having society understand this basic principle. So the Brahmanas were responsible for that, and that was the way of social cooperation between the castes. So as long as they kept teaching and promoting that people follow the rules and regulations of Scripture and conduct themselves properly, then they were remunerated with. So that's good deal. Question, what does it mean when it says that they were given girls? Well, the principle... Did you want to answer that?
Well, my basic understanding is the marriage was arranged. Mm-hmm. Not given girls in a seedy way that we might understand.
Not human trafficking or anything like that.
Yeah, but the marriage was arranged, given girls like that.
Yeah, because the kings or the Vaishyas, they may have more than one wife at those times, for sure. And they may have several children. And part of the custom was that, of course, a main duty of any father of children was to get his children married, and especially the girls. So, and we also know that when at a wedding, the father does what? He, walks his daughter down the aisle, and that's called what?
Giving away.
Giving away the bride. Because Vedically, it's called kanyadan, dan meaning wealth or charity, and kanya is a maiden or a young girl. So kanyadan means the giving away of a kanya, of a young maiden. And so the idea is that the father or the parents, they perform the kanyadan because they hand over their daughter, who's a responsibility to them, into the care of the husband. So the father's responsibility is to look after the daughter until she comes of marriageable age, and then he would give her away. He would hand her over because she still is meant to be looked after and cared for and protected and sheltered, as we discussed, I think, yesterday or the day before. So that's a giving away. So in this sense, then the Brahmins may be given, ladies who are marriable. Brahmins probably also could have had more than one wife, I guess. I'm not 100% sure on that, but most likely, it wasn't a frowned upon thing. What's it called? Polygamy? Yeah, which it sounds horrible, but then it was a normal custom to have more than one wife. So they may receive girls in charity. And also when in some of the pastimes you hear that even when a Kshatriya got married, not only did he get the girl that he wanted to marry, but she went with sometimes 4, 5, 10, 100 maid servant girls who would then go with him. So that one might be a little bit more difficult to explain, but that's, also we lived in times where in Varnashram there would be persons who would be Kshatriyas, but the Kshatriya order would be served by the other classes, and primarily by Shudra class. So the Shudras would be the servants. So that means that a young lady might have several maid servants who look after her, and they would go along with her to that house. Yeah.
All right, final verse.
Is it?
Yes, text 28.
A little purport.
Okay, 28. Thereafter, they offered the Brahmanas highly delicious foodstuffs, first offered to the personality of Godhead, and offered their respectful obeisances by touching their heads to the ground. They lived perfectly by protecting the cows and the Brahmanas. Purport. The behavior exhibited by the descendants of Yadu in the pilgrimage site of Prabhash was highly cultured and exactly to the point of human perfection. The perfection of human life is attained by following 3 principles of civilization: protecting the cows, maintaining the Brahminical culture, and above all, becoming a pure devotee of the Lord. Without becoming a devotee of the Lord, one cannot perfect one's human life. The perfection of human life is to be elevated to the spiritual world, where there is no birth, no death, no disease, and no old age. That is the highest perfectional aim of human life. Without this aim, any amount of material advancement in so-called comforts can only bring the defeat of the human form of life.
Yeah, so that's exactly what we were just talking about. This is the aim of life. Perfection of human life is to be elevated to the spiritual world. And without this aim, any amount of material advancement and so-called comforts can only bring the defeat of the human form of life. Next paragraph. Brahmanas and Vaishnavas do not accept any foodstuff which is not first offered to the personality of Godhead. Foodstuff offered to the Lord is accepted by the devotees as the mercy of the Lord. After all, the Lord supplies all kinds of foodstuff both to the human being and to the other animals. A human being must be conscious of the fact that all foodstuffs, namely grains, vegetables, milk, water, etc., the prime necessities of life, are supplied for mankind by the Lord, and such foodstuffs cannot be manufactured by any scientist or materialist in a laboratory or factory established by human effort. So just before I read on, so this is really important, that basically we should all, be eating, or as Prabhupada would say, we should offer what we eat and only eat that which is offerable. So, like that. The intelligent class of men are called Brahmanas, and those who have realized the absolute truth in his supreme personal feature are called Vaishnavas. Nice distinction, interesting. So the intelligent class are called Brahmanas, and that's because they understand the aim or the goal of life is to reconnect ourselves as spiritual beings with the Supreme. But those who have realized the Supreme in his original personal feature, they're called Vaishnavas. So that's an interesting distinction, a very important point. But both of them accept foodstuffs which are the remnants of sacrifice. Sacrifice is ultimately meant to satisfy the Yagya Purusha, Vishnu. In Bhagavad Gita 3:13, it is said that one who accepts foodstuffs as the remnants of sacrifice is freed from all sinful reactions, and one who cooks foodstuffs for maintenance of his body takes in all kinds of sins, which lead only to suffering. Yagyashashashana santo muchanti sarvakil bashai bunjati te twagam papa yapachanti atma karanat. The devotees of the Lord are released from all kinds of sins because they eat food which is first offered as sacrifice. And those who eat food basically for sense gratification, verily they eat only sin. The foodstuffs prepared by the Yadus at the Prabhas pilgrimage site to offer to the bona fide Brahmanas there were all offered to the personality of Godhead Vishnu. The Yadus offered their sincere obeisances by touching their heads to the ground. The Yadus, or any enlightened family in Vedic culture, are trained for attainment of human perfection by total cooperation of service between the different divisions of social orders.
The word Uru Rasam is also significant here. Hundreds of delicacies can be prepared simply by the combination of grains, vegetables, and milk. All such preparations are in the mode of goodness and therefore may be offered to the personality of Godhead. As stated in Bhagavad Gita 9.26, the Lord accepts only foodstuffs which are within the range of fruits, flowers, leaves, and liquids, provided they are offered in complete devotional service. Devotional service is the only criterion for a bona fide offering to the Lord. The Lord assures that he positively eats such foodstuff offered by the devotees. So judging from all sides, the Yadus were perfectly trained civilized persons, and their being cursed by the Brahmana sages was only by the desire of the Lord. The whole incident was a warning to all concerned that no one should behave lightly with Brahmanas and Vaishnavas. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports of the third canto, third chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled The Lord's Pastimes Out of Vrindavan. Well, there you go.
Wonderful. Thank you for sticking around.
Yes.
Hearing from the Srimad Bhagavatam, asking questions, inquiring deeply. So if you're interested, we have some Bhagavatams. If anyone would like a set, please let us know. Chaitanya Charitamritas. Or we have this wonderful book, as we've mentioned a few times, that we're reading because this is the 125th anniversary year of the appearance of Srila Prabhupada. So we have these wonderful books. This is the abridged version of the Prabhupada Leelamrita.
Yeah.
This is called Your Ever Well-Wisher, and it's an amazing book to understand the life and story of Srila Prabhupada and how he did the most amazing thing of transplanting Vedic culture from India and Sri Vrindavan Dham all the way to the west, starting in New York City and then all over the world. So like that. Okay. Thank you very much, everyone. Hare
Thank
Krishna.
you.